Hi, welcome to the Best of Mount Shasta. This is a show that interviews those who call the mountain their home in a particular way, a way in which is spiritual, a way in which is exploring new realities, new understandings to help the improvement of human life upon the earth. And we're really lucky today to have an astrologer named Glen Kaufmann, who has been practicing astrology for 43 years. You'll see that he's very, very well educated at what he's doing, and he really understands this craft. And he's been up here in Mount Shasta for a long, long time. And this is the kind of person that if you come up just on your own, you're new to the calling to Mount Shasta, you probably won't meet him. So this is really the importance of this show. And it's a great honor to turn it over now to Glen. Hi, Glen. Welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you.
What I'd like to do is have you start out, if you don't mind, early on in life where you felt there was some sort of awakening happening, something that was unusual in your experiences, and yet you felt it was profound.
Yeah, looking back through my life, I realized one of the things, I grew up as a musician, and woodwinds especially, and singing and so on. And I didn't realize until later, at the end of my 20s, that I had been doing pranic breathing exercises for hours on days on end, hours at a time, throughout my childhood. And I believe that that is actually what incited my spiritual calling, my abilities, my ability to be able to stand back. And I remember when I used to play and I'd have everybody looking at me on stage, that I could actually be outside of myself and going, wow, that sounds great. Can you do it again? Okay, turn a little to the left. And it was like I was directing myself from outside of myself. And it was very interesting because I would not forget anything that I played. When I was in those states, I could go back later and play note for note everything that I had just made up at that time. So I am an advocate when it comes to education now. I believe every student on the planet should be, especially since we don't have gym too much that has people using their breath, but every student should either be singing or playing some sort of wind instrument to help facilitate their ability to perceive.
Most interesting. How did it get that name, pranic healing?
I have no idea. I've called it Kundalini energy. I've called it Chi energy. I've called it the foundation in life. I don't really know the right terminology for what it's called, but there are times in my life where I'd be sitting in a chair like this and I would just get slammed off the chair. I'd be on the ground. There are times in my life where my feet would feel like they were cotton candy balls with no, it was almost like an aura, and they would be all inflamed, and I would have to wrap them in 4 or 5 inches of blankets just to get them to cool down. And it was this energy that was coming through that I believe was from all of the long tone breaths, all the controlled breathing that I did.
Amazing. A life force.
Yes.
Something awakening.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. So what age were you when you started playing music, and how long did that last for?
I was in 3rd grade, and it lasted till I was about almost 22 years old. And
amazing. All those years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I traveled to 18 countries. I sang at the Metropolitan Opera House. We got to sing for the Queen of England.
Oh, that's exciting.
I played with Billy Joel. I played with the Brooklyn Bridge. I played with, was 3rd best chamber singers in the country. It was really wonderful. I actually thought that was going to be my calling in life as a musician.
Of course.
Then I found astrology.
So, so this is why you're here today. Tell us about astrology. And it's interesting, if there's a link between the two, definitely let us know that.
Yeah, well, it's definitely the right brain, left brain thing. It's the artistic side of life. I always say with astrology, there's an art and a science, and you have to learn the science first. Then you become the artist. You need the two. All right. I was a psychology major in college. And I had a girlfriend do an astrology chart for me one time, and she had about 10 pages of longhand notes written out on this page, and proceeded to tell me stuff about myself that I knew she did not know. And my mouth, over the course of the half hour that she was talking to me, my mouth just was wider and wider open. And long story short, I ended up moving to California from Long Island and unpacking in Hermosa Beach. She kept the longhand, and she gave me what I called the squiggly lines at the time. And I looked at that and said, okay, this can teach me about myself. I know there's some here. I've seen it, you know. So I went down the street, about 2 blocks from where I lived, was a metaphysical bookstore in Hermosa Beach. And I walked in on a Wednesday and I said, I want to learn what this means. And they said, oh, timing is everything. We're starting an 8-week class on Friday. Why don't you come?
On astrology.
On astrology, a beginner
my
astrology class. And I already had 4 years of psychology under my belt. And by the end of the 8 weeks, I was actually helping the teacher teach the class. It was so familiar, so in tune with my understanding of how the world works. And I never stopped. After that, I just devoured every teacher on the planet, every book I could get my hands on. I have thousands of books. I even, in LA and San Francisco, when I first came to the West Coast, I couldn't afford to go and teach under these people in different countries. So I got involved with the astrology organizations that were bringing them here. And so I'd help them do the conferences. And so I got to study with all these teachers by bringing them to where I lived. I always thought that was...
So you had as profound a learning process for astrology as you had growing up playing the music.
Oh,
it was
yes.
out of the ordinary to be able to listen to these astrologers and learn from them.
Yes, yes. I've had a rather blessed life in that sense. I've had teachers come and go in my life. I've had situations and initiations and opportunities that is, what can I say?
Right, there it is.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden you've started to become an astrologer.
Right.
What were those years like, those beginning years?
I was always concerned. I was always, oh, did I study enough? Am I good enough? Because I didn't want to take on somebody's karma or give them improper information.
Of course.
And it took years. It took me about 20 years where I finally started feeling comfortable enough that, okay, I'm getting the right information. I understand this properly. I'm always telling people in the classes that I give, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing when it comes to astrology.
It's a person's life.
Yeah. And finally, after almost 2 decades of mostly people coming back and saying, I wish I had done what you told me to do because it happened, you know.
But has that happened a lot to you?
That has happened a lot.
Wow.
Yes. Just over and over again, I have people saying, yep, it happened just the way you said it was, you know.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the thing is, I didn't grab the bull by the horns and do it exactly as you said.
Wow.
You know, and I'm not very specific when I say that. I give people options. I usually let them see, okay, if you're going down the dark side of the opportunity, here's what it's going to look like. If you're doing the more light or spiritual side, here's what it's going to look like. I'm going to show you the axis. You get to choose where you want to be on that axis.
What road to take?
Yes.
That's interesting. So you were practicing in Southern California, but you live in Mount Shasta now. So where's the gap between those? What happened?
Oh, well, I cut my teeth on metaphysics in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Then started producing large New Age festivals at like the San Francisco Civic Auditorium and the LA Shrine Convention Center. And I got moved to San Francisco, right smack dab in the middle of Haight-Ashbury at the Red Victorian Hotel, in order to put a festival on at the Civic Auditorium.
What year was that?
1981.
Interesting.
All right. But by 83, I moved to San Francisco. But And
So you were in the thick of all of the beginning of that sort of new age wave, and people having big events and coming to learn and all of that.
Yeah,
So you just
yeah.
kind of went that direction for a while.
yeah, they were called Mind, Body, Spirit Festivals, Peacemaker Series. It was all these events, huge events.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
One was called Let There Be Light. It was the largest collection of crystals and different gemstones and stuff ever assembled on the West Coast at that time. It was on the 5th floor of the Civic Auditorium in San
And
Francisco.
that was still in advance of mainstream America at that time.
Right.
Interesting. So you've always been on the kind of the cusp of these waves that are coming along.
I like to uncover things. I have half my chart in the sign of Scorpio. And there,
Uh-oh, you're pretty intense.
yeah, there was some stuff I've had to, be sorry for in my life, but I've.
On the other hand, it's definitely served you well. You can go deep into things, and you definitely have done just that.
Right. Scorpio is the investigator, the the detective, that wants to ferret out what's hidden. So
Yeah, and you've done it so well in so many ways, So here you are in the San Francisco area. How did you ever even know there was a thing called Mount Shasta?
I had a friend of mine who had actually taken me to Ireland with 12 gentlemen, and we were doing some peacemaking between Northern and the Catholics and the Protestants and so on. And we'd leave a hotel and it would get bombed afterwards and so on. But he brought me up here to ski. And I really liked it. And then at the time I was living in San Francisco, I had a hotline that was getting like over 1,000 calls a day where people could find out information and so on. And people could leave messages. And one day I got this like 20-minute message, just seething vitriol, that this gentleman said if he could find me, he was going to kill me, that I was the devil's spawn, and that I should be glad, I should get out of the field that I was in. And after that 20 minutes, hearing that on the phone, I actually walked outside. I lived 3 blocks from the seashore, the Cliff House in San Francisco. And I'm looking, I go, I don't know my neighbors. It's always foggy around here. I have all of the intellectual knowledge, but I didn't feel like I had the spiritual path. And so I literally shut everything down and moved to Mount Shasta and said, if I'm worth my weight in salt as an astrologer, I could prove myself in Mount Shasta. At that time, even then, in the 80s, Mount Shasta was one of the spiritual centers in the world, at least in the U.S.
And you had heard that just through listening to people talk? And
being in metaphysics, yeah. It was always skirting around.
So it was part of the conversation.
Sedona, Mount Shasta,
Okay.
These.
So just from that, you felt compelled in one direction.
And I loved it up here. I said, I'm very much an intuitive, empathic type. I don't do well being around large groups of people. I walk in the woods a lot. I spend a lot of time, up on the mountain itself. Just
interesting.
And so,
what year was that you came up here?
That was 1988.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a bit of time. You've been up here
ever since.
Yeah.
There was a period where I had a second home in Santa Rosa and spent a lot of time down there, getting my son through high school and college. Mount Shasta High School, it's a great school, but he was just cruising through, and he needed something to sink his teeth into more. So
yeah. So here you are in Mount Shasta. You've moved up to Mount Shasta, and what was the journey like there? Kind of getting used to the area and things like that.
Yeah, but at the time there were 8 pretty well-known astrologers that lived in the area. So I said, okay, I've got my work cut out for me. I was, almost 20 years into it at that time. I was just feeling my oats where I felt like, okay, what I have to say is accurate. And everybody was into channeling at that time, and I used to wander on the mountain and go, well, why don't I have a guide? Why don't I have my own Seth or my own Ramtha or whatever?
Now, what's channeling? They're up here. They're going to see this show. That's a word that just doesn't It's not their vocabulary yet.
It's where some sort of higher intellect or knowledge or spirit gives you the information or comes through
Okay.
you or talks. And I was like, I want to be like everybody else. I want to serve. I want, let me be the
sweet.
messenger.
Yeah.
And I got flattened one time on the mountain and told in no certain circumstances, you do not get to personalize the information you get. You're not going to hear it as a person. You're not going to be able to tell that it's not you, that it's whatever. And so I've actually learned just to trust the knowledge that I get, the visions that I get, the lyrics that I hear from songs, the melodies, you name it. When I look at an astrology chart now, it's like a mandala. I just go right into it. It's beyond the intellect now. It's become the artistic side of it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and the two go together. There's an old saying, astrology is man's second oldest profession. But I'll let you mind wander on what the first profession was.
But that's interesting. So that do people in today's world understand that there's different levels even for an astrology teacher? And what you're talking about now is not like somebody signing up for an astrology course online and getting the computer charts and starting the teaching from that level. You've really given forth a whole understanding of the development of really what's necessary to become a good astrologer.
Yes.
Do you want to say more on that?
Again, it's an art form. And
Okay.
unless you know your medium, unless
You have to have the
know-
basics first.
You have to have the science first.
Okay.
You have to know the astronomy. I was great in math in high school. I could wrap this stuff. I call it spatial geometry. When you think about we're on the Earth and looking out at the planets in what direction, what's behind them, what's the cycle, how do they interact, and so on. It's a myriad. We're talking hundreds of different cycles at the same time. It's not just your horoscope. It's not just your sun sign. I used to do a lecture. It's not your grandmother's astrology anymore, especially since computers. I am so thankful that we have come up with computers. It used to take me hour and a half to calculate a chart and look at 5 years worth of transits. Now it takes me 3 to 5 minutes, and I have everything that I need to use to be able to talk to somebody for hours and hours and hours if necessary.
Incredible. Incredible.
Usually an hour and a half, and they're set for a number of years. And oftentimes they'll come back to me and say, but what about this? And I said, we talked about this. It's on the tape. Go listen to the lecture again. Every time you listen to the readings that we do, you hear something different.
And they have their chart in front of them while they're listening to it.
Yes, I show them. I
Yeah.
give them plenty of notes and longhand. and
That's
so on.
wonderful.
Yeah.
What more would you like to say about astrology here in terms of the teachings now, how people can find you, how they can connect with you? If they come up to Mount Shasta, is it better to have a session in person? Can it be done just as well over the phone? Do you reach international people? Give us sort of an understanding, because it's going to be a wide variety of
Right,
people out there
right.
that are going to be wanting to know.
The main thing is I have a psychological approach. I'm looking at the human potential in a person's chart and what can you do with it, all right? I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you're going to have 2.5 kids and you're going to have a chicken in your pot. I think very much that I spent some time in India, and the Vedic system seemed to be much more about getting a person comfortable with their station in life. I don't believe in that. I believe in the potential. So that's how I look at a chart. Here's your options. Here's what's coming. Here's the things that you had to deal with as a child, correct? And I will tell them things. Everything I do is under Mount Shasta Astrologer. My website, MountShastaAstrologer.com, Facebook, Twitter. I do daily forecasts on Twitter. Or that's actually daily forecast, the number 4, KAST.
So say that one slowly.
At daily forecast.
Okay.
on Twitter. You can get literally a daily transit forecast. It's not horoscopes.
Now, what do you mean by transit?
Transits, it's what's happening in the sky for everybody, regardless of what sun sign you are. Matter of fact, my stuff works well with horoscope columns. You look at the transit forecast for the generic tenor of the day, then you can look at your horoscope and you can actually get a little bit more refined information that way. I got a house right on the main boulevard in Mount Shasta, stuck up a sign. I feel like I'm here. I turn the light on. It's like I don't really advertise too much. It's the people who come to me, great. I'm going to teach them. I'm going to talk to them. I watch. One of the things I love the most is to watch people's eyes as they start to light up when they realize what we're talking about. When they understand themselves, they understand the cycles that they've been going through in their life and didn't realize that they were cycles and didn't realize that these were potentials that they had. That's the best part,
So they don't feel stuck with their life, which is what a lot of people are feeling right now.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I got extremely busy in 2020.
Yeah.
And I knew it was coming in my own chart. I'd been watching it for decades. That's why I made sure I had the main building and the school and the office, everything set up. Because it was actually called Transiting Uranus conjunct the Midheaven. It's an 84-year cycle. The Midheaven is your effectiveness in the world, and Uranus is a sudden flowering. And right in line. So I made sure I was ready to take advantage of it. And it's continued. It will continue for 7 years.
So for people coming out of COVID right now, to have a session with you would be very, very good, because there would be definitely a change in their life.
Yes.
And you prepare them for that.
Yes. We are actually in a period I'm calling the new Roaring 20s.
The new Roaring 20s.
New Roaring 20s. 2020, back in 2019, I called 2020 the year of the rototiller. I said, oh my gosh, people are going to be dying. We're going to be taking so many things, taking them out in the backyard and burying them, turning them into compost. Okay. From 2020 through 2026, cycles have a growth and flowering phase and then a reclining to seed phase. Well, from 2020 to 2026, we go from only 4 growth phases to 9 out of 10 growth phases by 2026. This is going to be phenomenal for the economy, for the world in general. But we had to get through 2021, which I called the long, hard slog. Okay,
Interesting. Yeah. So that. And so if someone were to come to you, they would get all of those growth.
I would integrate those personally into their charts.
Okay.
Is it going to come through their relationship? Is it going to come through their career? Is it their family? There's ways that we can zoom right in on an astrology chart and get very specific with people on how it will manifest for them, how the transits will manifest for them. So.
And then if someone's calling you from England, they can talk on the phone.
Zoom. I do Zoom, Skype.
Zoom. That's
telephone.
fabulous.
I have clients in 4 continents now. A whole slew of people in Australia, which is not great because I usually have to be up very, very early in the morning
of course.
to do this.
But that's interesting that you say that, because the reason, one of the reasons I started the Best of Mount Shasta was that people, not only in our own country, but internationally, who are drawn to Mount Shasta couldn't come because of the finances or their work situation or their family situation. Mount Shasta draws thousands and thousands of people every year, especially from the international countries. It always amazes me. You'll see a huge truck driving down this little business section of Mount Shasta.
Wait until next year.
Really?
Yeah. I'm calling it a spiritual gold rush for the Pacific Northwest, especially for Mount Shasta. And matter of fact, the Labor Day thing that we're doing, one of the things I want to talk on is what to expect in 2022.
Wonderful.
And it's a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. Hasn't happened since
Okay, slow down a second. A Jupiter, Neptune
conjunction, the two come together.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means they're both situated in the same area of the sky.
What's Jupiter's influence and what's Neptune's influence?
Jupiter's the teacher. Neptune is the metaphysician or the guru, the spiritual teacher.
Ah.
You put the two of those together, it's spiritual knowledge, spiritual opportunity.
So that's what will draw people to Mount Shasta.
Yeah, because it's going to be in Pisces, and Mount Shasta is the Pisces part of the planet. You can lay the zodiac over the Earth, and the Pacific Northwest is Pisces. Hawaii is Aquarius. The Sphinx is the Leo Virgo cusp. All the major spiritual monuments around the planet usually fall on the cusps around the planet. So it's one of the reasons I moved to Mount Shasta. Also, I wanted to be in the Pacific Northwest.
Interesting, interesting. So you see this happening. So it's going to happen that this time with the Best of Mount Shasta, we're going to have it online. And because so many people can't come here and have wanted to for so long. And it's interesting that with COVID, one good thing that came out of it was people got onto Zoom and got onto the online and got comfortable using the internet, so that we will be able to have it. And we're very much looking forward to having you be a speaker during that time. The one advantage we had when we had it at the park was that people could talk to the speakers afterwards.
Right.
And that, so we're going to have the first day, the speakers will be speaking for a period of time just about what they're going to be talking about. So people get a sort of a sense of them. And then we haven't quite determined the time. We'd like to do an hour for each speaker. So we're really pleased that you'll be part of that. Would you like to say some sort of closing things that you want those that will hear you talking?
We are moving into the age of Aquarius. Okay?
There's your audience.
Astrology is ruled by Aquarius. We are moving into a field or into a time where astrology will be recognized. It will become one of the medical sciences. The chair in Harvard University for astrology will be filled again. This is going to become part of mainstream education,
Wonderful.
Mainstream medical practice, mainstream psychology.
And thank you so much for being a part of the Best of Mount Shasta today. You'll have a chance to also hear Glen at the Best of Mount Shasta Conference and Festival coming up at the end of summer over Labor Day. But I can assure you that there's so much you already know that you'll be wanting to contact between now and then, Glen, to find out everything that he can offer for you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll hear from you and talk with you again.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Glen, very much.